While running for president in 2019, Pete Buttigieg revealed that he had learned Norwegian because he wanted to read novelist Erlend Loe in the original. Stories like this come up from time to time, and you might wonder if people really learn an entire language just to read a book. The simple answer is yes, many do. The more complicated answer is twofold. A not-so-secret secret to learning a language is to get lots of input in that language. This means listening to and reading in that language. Numerous polyglots make a habit of reading in their target languages, and they either were or soon become avid readers. On the flip side, many people become interested in a language because of an author or a book, but they soon find out there is a lot more to the language than just one book. Many cultures have rich literary histories, and knowledge of the language might also open up poetry, theater, music, and many other things in that language. So plenty of YouTube polyglots have already covered reading as a language learning strategy. Some, like Ollie Richards, have built entire careers on the storytelling method of language learning. But this channel is going to focus on the second part, the literary value of learning languages. There is a myth among many people, especially if they speak one of the world's major languages like English, that all great literature has already been translated into every language. The truth is that publishing has always had narrow profit margins, and translating novels can be expensive, and only a small fraction of books ever get translated into one of the major languages. And when we start talking about minor languages, it's even fewer. Not only that, the best writers show us the best of their language. And so many great works really do hit different in their original language. And so, yeah, it can really be worth your time to learn a language to read. This channel is going to be devoted to books that aren't as widely available outside their original language or are worth reading in their original language. And to really shake things up, I want to talk in cross languages. That is, I want to talk in English about books that aren't available in English and explain why I think it's worth learning that language and reading that book. And I want to do the same in Portuguese about some English books and so forth and so on. So let's see how it goes. Hello, I want to start today by talking about a simple book in a simple language. So if you're on the fence about this whole idea of learning languages to read, this might be the place to start. The book I want to talk about is Verda Koro, The Green Heart by Giulio Baggi, and it was written in the language of Esperanto. Esperanto is a planned language developed by L.L. Zamenhof, a Polish Jew, in 1887 as an easy-to-learn international language. It saw its golden age in the early part of the 20th century, especially the 1920s, 1930s, but due to a combination of the fact that its founder was a Jew, the fact that it had connections with the International Socialist Movement during the early days of that, and the fact that its heart was really in Eastern Europe, the Second World War just devastated the Esperanto community. In fact, it was almost wiped out. Despite this, there remains a small but dedicated community of Esperantists around the world, and I can put some links down below because there's a lot of resources on the internet. Esperanto takes a fraction of time to learn as any natural language, in part because it has simplified rules with no exceptions, and in part because of how it combines root words with grammatical endings to create meaning in such a way that a relatively small vocabulary can be used to say many, many things. Verda Koro is a simple book meant for early learners. It even has discussion questions with each chapter to facilitate it being taught in classes. Like many Esperanto books of that first golden age, It was published and circulated through various Esperanto organizations around the world, and it's hard to pin down exactly when the book was first published, but it was probably in the mid-1930s. Let's move on to the story. Verda Koro tells the story of a group of Esperantists in far eastern Siberia during the First World War. The teacher and protagonist of the story is a Hungarian prisoner of war. He and several of his comrades are allowed to leave the POW camp once a week to go into the local town to teach Esperanto. Under guard, of course. And already the history buff in me loves this story. Julie Bogby was a Hungarian soldier who was captured in the First World War and was served as a prisoner of war in Siberia. So this book is a rare first-hand account of what that life was like. The characters are also a very interesting mix of people. There's many different nationalities present. Among the prisoners of war, there's a number of different nationalities. And so too among the Russians themselves. One of the Russian soldiers is a Latvian conscript, for example. One of the main characters is the daughter of Polish immigrants that have immigrated to this region recently, and the whole village is so far east it's not far from the Chinese border, and there's a small number of Chinese as well, including a couple characters in the book. So this is a blend of cultures and characters that you don't normally see. The captives spend much of the novel in a state of flux. The revolution has come to Russia, but no one quite knows what that means yet. There's even a passage in the book about the band coming in playing patriotic music from the Tsar's regime because they haven't received new music yet, so they don't know what the new songs are going to be. That's how new the revolution is. For the captives, there's this whole question of, are they still prisoners of war? Are they still enemies to the Russian people? Is, the new regime going to be in the war and keep them as prisoners, or are they going to be let go? Is it going to be the communist, or is it going to be the white army? Because this is like before the Civil War even. Will they be freed to return home, or will they be trapped there forever? And there's a lot of stuff hanging out there. So despite being short and very simple story aimed at learners, there is so much going on in the story that it keeps you reading. And now, style. So one of the things that made me fall in love with this book, and one of the reasons it's one of my favorite books, is that despite being a very simple book, Julie Bogby writes in a way that makes it feel like a stylistic choice and not writing down to learners. And that is a rare gift. I also love how the narrative and the setting turns our expectations on its head. The theme is typical of Esperanto. We are all human. We navigate many national identities, but at our root, we are all humans. So the Russian soldier is in fact Latvian and is conscripted into the Russian army. The prisoners served in the Austro-Hungarian army, but they're Czechs, they're Hungarians, they're Poles. There's, like I said, Chinese people that are merchants from just across the border. But they're all people. And through the Esperanto, they get to see each other as fellow people and not as whatever nationality. The setting itself kind of defies expectations. Most narratives about the First World War focus solely on Europe and forget that Asia was even part of it, or that Russia extends so far that it's partially Asian. The regional tension and the conflicts appear throughout the book and form part of the story as well. So it's definitely worth reading. Which brings us to, why is it on the bookshelf? Well, to my knowledge, Verda Koro has never been translated into English and probably never will. It just wouldn't meet the ideals of the Esperanto community to think this should be spread in another language. And besides, a few weeks of study on learno.net or on Duolingo is probably sufficient for you to begin this book. And it gets a little more complicated as you go through, but you can definitely get through it without a whole lot of effort. The book answers the question, why learn Esperanto? There's a ton of literature in Esperanto that is definitely worth reading. The book starts out very simple, gets more difficult, but it also shows what a skilled writer can really do with a language like Esperanto. And for that reason, even if a translation existed, it would still be worth reading in the original. And best of all, you can pick up a PDF copy for free online. And I'll put that link down below too. So that's my first book that you might want to put on your polyglot bookshelf, La Verda Koro. Thank you, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode. Ciao.